Well, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron and Growth Podcast. I am your co-host, Bennie Fowler, along with Ryan Harris, and today we have an incredible guest, 11-year NFL veteran, Brandon Lloyd, but also businessman, speaker, all-around great human, B. Lloyd. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Hey,
Absolutely,
of course,
man.
man. One of my favorite teammates of all time. You got your masters. You've mastered business in addition to the gridiron. But let's start with the football.
Okay.
You were not a first-round pick. From Kansas City, went to Illinois. Not a first-round pick.
Big Ten.
But one of the best receivers I ever played with.
Appreciate
When no one thought you could do it, what did your work look like?
Oh, being a fourth-round draft pick, I always talk about the NFL draft. We're at that time of year where it's coming up while we're recording this podcast. Yeah. But I always say the only person happy in the NFL draft is the first overall pick.
Yeah.
Everyone else thinks they should have been drafted higher.
Of course,
yep.
yes.
And, I left leaving Illinois early after my third season on the field. I was projected to be a first-day pick. That could have been third round, as high as the second round. And, didn't perform very well at the NFL Combine. Had the flu traveling in from California, ran a 4.62 40, just did not perform well. Bounced back in my pro day and recovered, ran the 4.4 that, that I was, projected to run and could run. But being undersized, I was probably 175 pounds going into the draft, and I just been in college. I was just malnourished. I wasn't thinking about being a pro athlete at all.
Right.
I was just in school, and but thinking I had a chance, and thinking I was going to go in the second round, and end up sliding all the way to the fourth. So the 49ers called me that morning, and Eric Yarber, the receiver coach, called me and was like, I can't believe you're still available. We can't believe you're still available. I mean, bad for you, but it's still good for us.
He said that? Wow.
It's like good for us, but it was just happy to be on it, going somewhere to the 49ers where they wanted me.
Right.
Someone actually wanted me. So I think that was a really helpful component to that. I was going somewhere where they wanted me, and then I could, feel the confidence and get into my groove.
Talk about getting drafted to the 49ers. So you get the call, and then you go to the 49ers, and you're playing now with Terrell Owens. You're playing with some incredible receivers.
Yeah, J.J. Stokes.
Yeah. Wow. You don't hear that name all the time. Was number 83, right?
Yes.
He's number 83.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. Talk a little bit about your welcome to the NFL moment. What was that like when you walk into the NFL locker room?
It was difficult because this was 2003, so there were still some legacy players there from the late 90s. Bryant Young was on that team, and then there were some 90s players on the offensive line. Jeremy Newberry, Derek Deese, Ron Stone, and Scott Bragg. And so there was these legacy players from the mid and late 90s. So the locker room was very much a 80s, 90s culture. Right? So,
We're not going to say anything more than that. Just going to leave it there.
There's just, there
difference.
was hazing.
Yeah.
And so, and it was just trying to build this callus of being tough on that team, which was helpful. It was helpful for me because, I was at University of Illinois. I was at school to be a student. Yeah. The NFL happened to me. I was not thinking I was going to the NFL.
You didn't think you were going to the league when you wanted to go to Illinois?
No, I was going to be a broadcast journalism major. That's why I picked Illinois, because I was going to be a broadcast journalism major, going to go to school, have a solid career at a Power 5 school, go into radio, do a few years in radio, go to television, then maybe go national. I was thinking Stuart Scott. I liked Ahmad Rashad when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I liked watching Inside the NBA. I liked James Brown when I was growing up. So that was just, I was going to school. And then Ron Turner called me in his office one day after, during the bowl week, we're preparing for the Sugar Bowl. He's like, I heard you got an agent. I said, hell no, I don't have an agent. I would never do that. My parents would kill me if I leave school. I would never do that. And he's like, all right, good. I was just checking because the scouts say you have an agent. The scouts here. I was like, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, scouts is looking at me. And then I left the office and I was like, oh, snap. I was like,
about to hire an agent. Yeah.
So you know, when I got to the 49ers, you know, it was incredibly intimidating because, you know, Terrell Owens was Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
J.J. Stokes had just left. Excuse me, it was Ty Streets who was there from Michigan.
Yeah.
T.O., Ty Streets, this cat Cedric Wilson from Tennessee. They drafted me, and then they brought in Arnez Battle.
Notre Dame guy.
Yeah. And they switched him to receiver.
Yep.
So he was going to play slot and special teams punt returner. And so when I got into that locker room, I was like, man, I'm not nowhere near the size of Terrell Owens. And he was on my case. He was like, man, just grab the guy and just throw him out the way. I'm like, what is he talking about? And so what I did was I sat in that locker room and I just started to build my own player. So I was like, all right, there's no way I'm going to be able to do anything that Terrell Owens is doing on the field. But he eats healthy. Mm-hmm. He trains incredibly hard. I mean, we'd be on a practice and he had bands on his hips and resistance bands on his waist and his hips.
He's still like that.
And going in one-on-ones with resistance bands and lighting dudes up. I mean, come on. It's just like, what is going on out here? No, it's like those silly social media memes where you look around and people on the lifting weights.
Yeah. You're like, what are they doing?
Lifting on top of the pull-up bar.
Yeah.
I'm just like, Terrell Owens is doing this out here in practice. It's like, damn, that's impressive. And so I just sat in the meetings like, all right, he eats right, he works out. All right, let me change my mindset. Let me get off the fast food. Let me start taking it seriously in the weight room. And then I looked at Ty Streets and his shiftiness at the top of his routes. And then the way he, looked the ball in all the way into the tuck. And so I was like, all right, take some of that shiftiness. And then Cedric Wilson, he was a smaller, compact receiver. So he'd sink his hips, boom, and go in and out of the routes. And I was like, all right, I need to start sinking my hips. So I just took components from these three players and built my own player. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of my first training camp, I made a move in practice, and Ty Streets turned around and looked at me like, that's my move. I was like,
yeah. Not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't gonna. Yeah, but they weren't gonna take the time to train me either because it's that old school mentality. It's like, dog, this is ours. Mm-hmm. So it's like, man, I have to go get it. So I need to build my own player that I didn't know about, and so that was my attitude. It was also helpful that Greg Knapp was offensive coordinator.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Wow.
We ran the same exact offense verbatim at the University of Illinois.
West Coast.
Really?
It's an exact West Coast offense. So I didn't have to think about studying the playbook. I already knew it. I mean, even the audibles, it was verbatim, the same offense that Ron Turner ran at Illinois. So that was also helpful for me. As a rookie going in, you're like, oh, I got to know the playbook. Then I got to work on technique. Then I got to think about special teams. Then I got to, think. I was just like, all I was thinking about was technique.
I love that you built your own player. It reminds me a lot of when I first came into the league. I knew I wasn't going to be shifty like Wes Welker, but I took what DT had because we weren't, he was 10 pounds heavier than me, but I was a big receiver. I took a little bit of Emmanuel Sanders. I took a little bit of Jordan Norwood, and I crafted my own thing so I could play inside and outside. I love the fact that you did that because you have to do that right away. I tell people all the time in business and in sports that like the first thing you do is look at who's already doing it well.
That's right.
Look who's doing it well and just follow them. That's the way you'll stay in the league. If somebody's been in the league for 5 years, 6 years, just follow that guy.
That's right.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, no, I believe that in the same way. I'm at Mercer right now in health and benefits consulting.
Yeah.
And, Mercer's, 80,000 employees, 126 countries, right? And when I'm talking to professionals about it, it's like, that must be hard being in such a large organization. I said, actually, I like it because you're around so many different leadership styles, so many different leadership types. And I'm like, well, how many client teams are you working on? I was like, I'm on 7. It's like, geez, that's got to be a lot. It's like, no, but I get to see 7 different lead, probably 4 different lead consultants and how they go about each process and handling the clients. And so it's like I get to build my own professional, my own broker.
Yeah.
Well, you also built your own joy. And there were many things that you imparted on me when we were teammates. But the thing that gave me the most freedom to be myself, and I think that people that whether they're in business or sports can take, you had an unbelievable ability to have your own joy regardless of what anybody thought of you. Whether they believed in you or not, whether they started you on the 3rd Street, you were just happy anytime you had the opportunity. Where did that joy come from? How do you build that joy when people don't believe in you or don't see your capabilities?
One, I was just honored to be in the NFL and to fulfill this dream. Well, you know, obviously I was saying I didn't think it was going to happen to me.
Right.
But you best believe when I was a kid, you know, I was recording. You know, you probably don't remember. We always giving them crap about being young, but VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So I would record NFL games on VHS, and I'd adjust the tracking so that little fuzzy line would come out at the screen.
Yeah.
So I have a clear picture, and I have it on slow motion, and I see the Jerry Rice running the routes, and then I go out in the backyard and I do it. And then I go into my Little League practice or middle school practice and do it. And so I was able to, like, you know, put what I was watching into practice. So I was absorbed with sports when I was young. You know,
Gave you fun.
Yeah, and so it's like to be able to then do it on that stage, you know, it was a dream come true for me. So I was just happy to be there.
But it was every day, bro. You were happy at practice. I was like, I hadn't heard that before. I mean, we had Tom Nalen on the team earlier. He was never happy. You know what I'm saying? At practice. But like, did you say to yourself, like, wow, what a great day to be able to go do this? Or what was it that you said to yourself that turned it on?
It was just on. I was just on 10. You know, like I said, I was just happy to be there. I was happy to be
really
in the
genuine.
NFL and put my talent on that stage and, you know, being a 4th-round pick. But they moved T.O. and Ty Streets out my second year. I was a starter my second year in the NFL. I was a 4th-round draft pick. So, I mean, I was just like, you know, this is the dream. This is it. So, you know, I'm living it. And it was just, I just woke up ready to get after it. I mean, there was just nothing. You know, I didn't have to really say much to myself because I wanted to be there. I enjoyed training camp. Oh, great. 2-a-days? Oh, take me away from the family? Fine. Like, oh, just football? I mean, this is the way it should be.
Right.
You know, just football? All right, practice? Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, I was just hyped for it.
So second year, become a starter, and they're starting to give you a lot of love on social media, which I told you about a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago when I saw you, in terms of like you were OBJ before OBJ in terms of the one-handed catches.
100%.
And we were just talking before the pod. You want to tell a little bit about
He made
this?
that one-handed catch in the preseason game, and I'd never seen it. And I was like, oh, my God, what's he doing? You know, I'm like, he's making the team, you know? And again, just somebody who was happy and just went about his business, and then the opportunity came, grabbed it every time.
Did you always make one-handed catches? Did you practice one-handed catches? Because you have plenty of one-handed catches on tape. I mean, it's like you, Moss, and Odell in terms of like consistent one-handed catches in games.
Yeah, but no NFL players have a tape that's like 10 minutes long.
Of one hand, and that's all
Thank
you.
you.
Talk
Thank
that.
you.
Talk
Let
that.
him know.
Talk
Let
that
him
talk,
know.
Lloyd.
They got to be shy around here.
You know, it's like 9-10 minutes
Of
of them
one-handed
catches.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I was younger, you know, my father, he was a Golden Glove boxer. So his knuckles was all calloused over from being in the mitts. And so I'd always be pestering him. You know, I was obsessed with sports. It was like, throw the ball to me, you know, throw the football to me. So he'd throw out there and, you know, my dad throw like a woman. He's a boxer. He'd throw the ball be flopping around. I'd be diving all over the place, catching it, jumping high, you know, falling all over the place. But as I got older, I was like, I think he was doing that on purpose. I think he was seeing how far, you know, I would be willing to go to get the ball.
Right.
And
He
so,
found out.
Oh yeah, and so he was like training me to do that, and so it was always something that I was doing in high school. You know, I was in high school, I would go dive for it. College, I was diving for it, reaching for it, just making extra effort. One, because I was just naturally flexible to do it, and two, that separated me from the other players. That's what I would say. So when I got to the 49ers, Terrell Owens wouldn't dive for the ball. He wouldn't do it. See, he'd rather the ball go incomplete than to dive and drop it. So I said to myself, I'm going to continue. I'm going to go dive and catch it. You know, he wanted to catch and run. I'd rather just make the play.
Right.
Like, I don't care what happens afterwards. So, you know, it just became something that distinguished me from the other players. But in reality, it was out of necessity. When I played with Tom, the ball was coming right in the breadbasket.
Right.
You know, so some of the other quarterbacks I was playing with, you know, it was just like, man, just get in the general vicinity and let me try to make the play for you. And that was just the arrangement, and it worked.
You got a lot of young receivers now about to enter the NFL. What are 3 things you would tell them that matters most if you want to be a successful receiver in the NFL?
I think being a successful receiver is, one, mastering the fundamentals. That would be fundamentals of route running and pass catching, you know, just basics. 2 would be understanding, obviously, the playbook. You ain't going to play if you don't know the plays.
Yeah.
Simple. And then finally, I would say effort, putting in maximum effort. It's not effort is like it's a talent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a skill that you turn on and off. It's just maximum effort. Give it all the time, regardless of the situation. Talk about preseason.
Yeah.
You know,
it's an opportunity.
Give maximum effort at all times. You know, don't have the coaches have to start trying to manage your effort. Because once a coach needs to start coaching, rather you're going to be on today or off today, then that completely distracts them from being able to coach against the other coach. Or think about the schemes, or your position coach can't assist the head coach because now he's trying to manage personalities on the sideline. So I think that's probably the top 3 advice that I give.
Talk a little bit about your best year in the NFL, where you won the receiving crown in terms of most yards in a season. I don't know many people who have done that. Maybe you and Michael Thomas are the only people that I know personally where I've had actual conversation where you had the most receiving yards. Talk about that season, how that season got started, and then what was it like? Just 1,500, 14. I think you had 1466. Yeah. What was that like?
It was special. You know, because in 2008, 2007. I was released from the Washington Commanders 2 years into a 7-year deal. 2 years into a blockbuster contract, I was cut. Ron Turner was in Chicago, my college head coach. Calls me, hey, man, I can't vouch for anything that happened out there because I read all the clippings like everyone else. Lovie Smith read it all too. He said, I can't vouch for it, but I'm going to tell Levy that I've known you since you was 17 years old, and you're a really good kid. He's like, so if your mind's right and you want to come to Chicago and play, let me know. And I said, I do. So Levy called me and brought me into Chicago on a 1-year deal. So I played a 1-year deal there, tore my PCL. I was getting my college credits. I was already in Illinois, so I was like, I think I'm done. My agent calls, was like, June. He's like, no teams are calling. I think this is it for you. So I was like, all right. So I get my college credits. I line something up with the Big Ten Network, and the producer of the Big Ten Network's like, no, I think you're still going to get a call. I was like, fam, I'm done. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, we're not going to start building a production around you, and then you leave. So I was like, all right. I was like, just give me till mid-July. And so I was getting my credits, or I was ready to finish college and get the
So you weren't working out?
I was in this weird shape. So I was working out with my dentist, who was a big Russian Jewish guy, so like big old legs and ass. I was Olympic lifting with him, so I was doing power squats and cleans and lunges with him. And then I was hooping with the hip-hop community on the south side of Chicago. And then in my neighborhood in Lake Forest, I was rock climbing with the chefs.
See what I mean?
Doing everything.
See what I mean? I love this guy, man.
I was just doing things to keep me busy. Right?
Yeah.
And so Kyle Orton calls, because they just did the swap for Orton to Cutler.
Okay.
From Chicago. So I was with Orton in Chicago. And he calls from Denver. It's like, man, I think we could use you out here. I'm going to tell Josh McDaniels to give you a call. He's like, what kind of shape you in? I'm like, I think I'm in decent shape. And so I got the call, came out, lit up a workout. I mean, and I hadn't touched the football since then,
Riding the bike, though.
November.
Nikola Jokic style.
Yeah. And came in, lit it up. They were offering me the contract before I could even get on the plane. My agent was like, get your tail back to Chicago. And so I came into Denver. in 2009 behind Brandon Marshall, Eddie Royal, Stokely. I mean, these are all fan favorites.
Right.
And they had Jabbar Gaffney. They just brought Jabbar Gaffney in. And so I'm the 5th receiver on the team.
Yeah.
Right? And didn't play the entire 2009 season.
Special teams only? No, or not didn't dress?
I didn't even dress.
Oh, man.
Wasn't Coach mad at you because you went golfing one game? Was that right?
No. Well, no. I mean, in San Diego.
Look, I'm not. You know, I'm not a fan of him. So you know,
That's right.
so you know.
No, well, he wasn't mad at me for that. They brought me on the trips. They traveled me,
Okay.
even though I was not dressing.
So he said, "I'm gonna go play golf."
So we're in San Diego. So I played Torrey Pines.
I never seen that. This guy was
staying
staying
in Torrey Pines.
after he goes, "I'm gonna go golf." I'm like, "What? I never heard it."
So I'm on the tee box, and the defensive coordinator walks by. They're just going to do an exercise lap around Torrey Pines on the golf course, and I'm teeing up, and I look up, and the defensive coordinator is looking at me like, "Okay," like, "All right." He's like, "You got balls."
Yeah.
So I got 9 holes in on Torrey Pines before.
Nice.
It was a nighttime game. So,
Yeah.
so
Nothing
Beautiful
wrong
course.
with it. Nothing wrong.
it was more of like WTF.
Yeah.
You know, that's what Josh said to me. What are
Yeah.
you doing? I was like, anyway. But I played the last two games in the 2009 season because players were faking injuries because they didn't want to ruin their chances for the next season.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? One of the players said to me, "Man, you should be thanking me. I'm doing you a favor." I said, "All right." I said, "But the problem is, once they put me in, they probably ain't gonna take me out."
Right, exactly.
That's what I told him to his face. Sure enough, played those last 2 games, maybe, put up 70, 80 yards, whatnot. Came into the next season, and Josh McDaniel said to me, he says, "If you play anything like you played your first seasons in the NFL, you'll go all pro." He says, "You don't remember that I ran your pro day, did you?" And I said, "No." He's like, "I ran your pro day at Illinois, New England. We were all there. I wanted to draft you, and Bill didn't want you." And so he's like, "If you play anywhere near the way you were playing," I was like, that was 7, 8 years ago. And I was like, "Man, I'm so much stronger and I'm so much better than I was then." I was like, "All right." And so that was the confidence I had going into that season. And that season, I was remarkably healthy. I mean, I was going into games 100%.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. I mean, it was bizarre. And you know how it is.
Exactly.
It's
It's unheard of. I mean, I was going to games 100%, where I was like, "Man, I'm going to light it up." Taking some shots in the game and be like, "All right." And I was kind of going down from 100%. So I go from 100% to like 85%, which was still,
Still great.
You got to ball at
great.
85%.
still
Got to,
balling.
yeah.
I mean, that's balling range when you're at
Yeah.
85% going into games. So I think for that season, it was a combination of a coach finally doing what they were saying that they were going to do. It's like, "Man, I'm going to feed you."
Yeah.
And then me having that effort mentality, having a good relationship with Kyle Orton. We actually genuinely liked each other. We didn't spend all of our waking hours together or off the field together, but we liked one another in Chicago. And I got there. We liked each other. He trusted me. Running that offense Tom Brady was running. So it was that cerebral offense that I've always wanted to run. Yep. Quarterback and the receivers all needed to be on the same page. So it was just incredibly cerebral. And then just the opportunity. So I always talk about it. It was the point where effort and opportunity meet. I was already an effort guy. Now I was getting opportunities, and it just worked. And then obviously being healthy, I couldn't even believe. I was waking up some mornings. I was just like, I can't believe I feel like this.
Don't feel like that no more, do you? Yeah.
Actually, I do. I do.
Okay, you know what? Get out. Yeah. Well, we have to transition here.
Yes.
Because you transitioned, but you said something to me when we were teammates that blew my mind because you started that transition early. Because everybody, every locker room has a couple of hip-hop or rapping or R&B guys. And I remember sitting at lunch with Brandon Lloyd, and he goes, "Man, I ain't doing no concerts and shows. I'm getting my music licensed by Microsoft." And I was like, "What? Walk us through how you got on Madden and more."
Yes. Well, early in my NFL career, when I was recording music, finally I was able to record professionally because I was always recording music on a karaoke machine. You know, I'd buy the 99-cent singles from the, you know, FYE music store.
I'm definitely young in this one.
Yeah, yeah. It's compact disc. It was a single. Yeah, one song on it.
Well, actually have 3 songs.
Yeah. If you're lucky. Yeah.
So you'd have you know the cassette. So you'd have the radio, the explicit version, the radio version, and the instrumental.
Okay.
And so I'd take the instrumental and make my own songs on a karaoke machine when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so I just carried that through to college using Napster, download the instrumentals, record songs. A few guys on the Illinois team had a whole rap group. You know, I was making CDs, handing them out to guys. They were bumping them in their cars and whatnot. So I finally got to the NFL, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to continue on making music. It makes sense. You know, I was modeling myself after Deion Sanders anyway. So this was just all part of the component. You know, I was flashy. I looked different on the football field, you know, marketed myself differently on the football field. And then I had this music component like Deion Sanders did. And so I was like, oh, I'll just continue that on. But when I got in the NFL, I realized that the media frowned upon that because of the corporate image of the NFL. It didn't match up with me being this corporate NFL commodity item. And then I'm supposed to be competing with Lil Wayne.
Hey.
So these are the 2 personas you're trying to match. It's like, not even close. I'm in my own lane. Listen to my music. It never resonated. So the problems I ran into were that the music industry was like, are you going to go on tour? And I'm like, no. Right. So we can't use you.
Right.
You know, so these are the 2 dilemmas I was caught up in. It's like, you're going to ride on a tour bus, you know, all off season, all across America, doing these shows in these rinky-dink towns? Like, no. It's like, well, so, you know, I need to come up with a different business model. So I moved into licensing and syncing. And so I would create competitive music. So it would sound like Nelly. It would sound like Lil Wayne. It would sound like 50 Cent. It would sound like The Game. And then I would license it and sync it to television shows, you know, budget movies. And so I had to deal with Microsoft. Paintball MPPL was one of my first licensing deals, a song called Heavy. Midway video games. They did a NBA Jams remake called NBA Ballers. So I made a song called Take It to the Hoop for them.
Wow. I played those games.
All right, we're getting into your age now. All right. Hey, man, you know, you're going to cross some eras with him. Right. You know?
Then I Comedy Central, licensed a song to Comedy Central, became Radon's theme song on the TV show. And for me, it was more of, you know, taking myself out of the competition with mainstream artists, still being able to do what I love to do, which is tell stories and rhyme, you know, over instrumentals, and just be able to have that outlet. That was what that was all about.
Serial entrepreneur, businessman.
Yeah.
I'd love to know just what that transition was like throughout your career and how you grew throughout your career, but then also the transition out of football. Like, when did you know it was time?
Yeah, and you know, and to that, you know, while we were talking about, you know, just that shift, you know, and what I was doing with music, in my time in Denver, I was also working in the off seasons. I was working in aerospace sales.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So I met a man at Nuggets games. You know, I would buy, you know, this was 2009, so I would buy all the big games. You know, when Kobe would come in town, because Brian Cook, you know, he was a power forward for the Lakers at the time. He went to Illinois. So I, you know, wanted to be close to see him. I wanted to be close to see D-Ron Williams when he'd come in town from Utah. So I, you know, get the floor seats to see them. And then when Wade would come in town, and, you know, all the big names. So I was probably buying maybe 10 floor seats for Nuggets games for the season. But I just went on, you know, StubHub and bought the same seats every time.
Yeah.
And so same 2 seats. And it just so happened to be next to the same man every time, you know, next to his season tickets. The first time is like, oh, my son recognizes you, you know.
You're the Brandon Lloyd.
Yeah, the Brandon Lloyd. Like, yep. And then the next time it was like, hey, you're new to town. You don't know anybody. Let's exchange information. I'll show you pretty much what roads to take, what restaurants to become a regular at. And maybe if we like each other, get to know each other, I can sponsor you at one of the golf clubs I belong to.
Wow.
I was like, great. So we started golfing together, having some dinners together. And then he asked me, he was like, what do you plan on doing? Are you going to plan on rapping, when you're done? Being a musician? I was like, no. He's like, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, this is 2009. We were getting locked out by the owners in 2010. He says, well, at the end of the season, he's like, well, since you're going to be unemployed, why don't you come work for me in the off season? And then I'll give you a leave of absence to go play in the NFL.
Wow.
Wow.
So this was the first business opportunity that I had where someone wasn't asking me for money. They were paying me money.
Right.
And so for me, it was just like, yes.
Yeah.
And what do I know about aerospace sales? Nothing. He's like, I'll teach you. So he connected me with the metallurgist that he had on staff and put me in a business-facing relationship. I had the Boeing account, the SpaceX account, managed the subcontractors that were in Michigan. These were the old auto manufacturers that went down, and now aerospace companies came in and converted them into aerospace manufacturing firms. So he put me client-facing, out on the road during the off-season, which was, great. It was, distinguished Re-Steel from other companies because there's not, very many young black men in the aerospace industry anyway,
right.
but also young black men who are in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so it really helped with business relations and public relations and then just ice breaking. And so it was, to me, I was saying to myself, I was like, I didn't realize how stunted my maturity had been by being in the locker room for so long.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so I was like, this is my first opportunity to be behind the curtain, see how a small business operates, what professional attire is, how to communicate with individuals, how to humble myself and cold call.
Yeah.
How to humble myself traveling on the road and knocking on doors and sitting in lobbies and then being coached in a different way, from an engineer, from a metallurgist, from Boeing, so it was just an incredible exercise for me. And so that was more me having the foresight in year 8 to where I was like, all right, this is coming to an end for me. I'm still getting after it though,
Right.
but I still need to be realistic about what the end is like for me and what the next phase is going to be for me. So that's, where I was like, all right, I know that I want to go corporate after I finish the NFL, and I need to start building up that professional
experience
while I'm in the NFL.
You showed everyone on every team you were on how capable we really are. It's something that allowed me to think about, even reading books. Like, I can read books. I don't care if you guys don't read books. I'm reading books, right? What do people get wrong that you see now, whether in the business world or when you're watching sports? What do people get wrong about their capacity to succeed, their capacity to do more, to do the things that they have to do to get to where they want?
Damn, that's a deep question. Obviously, you want to have goals, set a plan, stick with it, but also not get pigeonholed into to what others believe about us. I think that's the most important part of that. Where, all right, I'm a football player. I'm just a football player. No, that's not it. There's more to that. I think also having individuals in our lives who can speak honestly to us and speak truthfully to us about where we're at, and who we can speak honestly and truthfully to about where we're at in our lives. I had a lot of friends who were outside of the football space who are business professionals, and the one thing they did was they never looked at me like I was high and mighty. They never looked at me like I was above them or better than them. A lot of these business professionals was making NFL money.
Yeah.
They was making more money than I was making.
Yeah.
But what they did was they was grounded enough and secure enough in their manhood and their profession to say, oh, damn, you got released 2 years into a 7-year deal with the Washington Commanders. Same thing happened to me. Right? And so I was able to draw these parallels to me. So I was kind of like, oh, look, I'm not a football player. It's like I'm not living in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
I am in a business world. I am just like everyone else. Like, we are in this business world. And when they draw these comparisons, it's kind of like, all right, let me snap out. Let me not feel bad about myself. Let me get back up. let me apply some outside readings and outside learnings to, oh, what was that book you're talking about? Oh, who was this leader? Oh, who's this politician? What they say? What was the speech about? And so I was kind of like bringing in all these different external stimuli into my life to keep me kind of motivated and understanding that, you know, yes, I'm playing football, but I'm not curing brain cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, this is just, for me, you know, a means to an end. You know, I'm doing this because I actually have talent at it. Yeah, I can make a ton of money at it, but there's going to be a whole nother lifetime that I'm going to have afterwards. And so, you know, my time in the NFL afforded me the opportunity to continue education, to travel, right? And so all these things, to be philanthropic, to do the things that I'm passionate about in life.
Yeah. What does the next 10 years look like for Brandon Lloyd?
You know, continue on, you know, in my corporate plan. You know, it was the neat exercise being in the business program at the University of Denver, because I put together a 3-5-7 year plan. And the wild part about it is like, you know,
Didn't take 3-5-7.
I'm already
right?
going
Yeah.
on the 3.
Yeah.
You know, I'm already on the 3. You know, one thing I said to myself when I was in business school and I was studying all this business history and reading all these current events about business culture, I was like, man, I want to work for a big ass multinational company. You know, that was the one thing that I had on my mind. And so it was like, boom, you know, at Mercer, you know, got that, you know, it's like, what's next? And, you know, executing that plan. So it's like, you know, in 3 years, what would that look like? You know, could I expat?
Mm-hmm.
You know, could I transfer to a larger city? You know, all these things that are only possible when you're at a big ass multinational company.
Right.
You know, 5 years. You know, will I be lead consultant? You know, will I, will I be in an internal training facing, you know, model, or, you know, will I take my talent and go to a smaller company and be COO? You know, so it's like, you know, all those options are just open, you know, by, you know, having the ability to be led by, you know, such experienced leaders at Mercer. And, you know, so I just leave those opportunities open.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, I had definitely taken the time to set and develop those plans. And I think the same thing applies from the football. It's the effort and putting the effort in, and then when given an opportunity to be able to deliver.
Well, what an amazing conversation. The Brandon Lloyd, 11-year veteran of the NFL, MBA holding, Mercer working, big-ass multinational company. It is now big-ass multinational company. One of my favorite teammates, a teammate that taught me a lot when we were together, no doubt taught everybody here a lot. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.